Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending the Coos County Forestland Classification Committee. For the people on Zoom, I think there was a little message on your screen kind of explaining what's going on here tonight. Tonight's a public information meeting, so we have some a little bit of committee business to attend to begin with, and then there will be a presentation about Forestland classification, what it is, why we do it, and what it means to you. And then there'll be a brief time frame for questions and answers with the committee. Due to the Zoom virtual reality environment we're in, all of that will be done through the Zoom chat. The speakers, your speakers and your cameras are turned off currently, just to kind of, so we don't get inundated with too many questions all at the same time and have some of those issues going on. So if you have questions, put it in your chat box and the committee will answer those. If you are calling in on a telephone and you do not have the Zoom capability to see stuff, this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted on our website, and links to the meeting also on our Facebook, so you can go back at a later time and watch the presentation if you feel if you want to. And if you have questions, because you were muted as well, just to kind of, like I said, keep the order so we don't have multiple people talking at the same time. If you have questions, please write those out and mail those to the Coos Forest Protective Association, Forestland Classification Committee in care of Robert Franson, Franson, and the mailing address is 63612 5th Road, Coos Bay, Oregon 97420. And we'll also have all that information up on, we can get that up on our website as well in case you need to refer back to that for proper addressing. I believe that covers all of the, just kind of a brief overview of what we're doing tonight and the process and everything else. Again, like I said, it's a public information meeting, and to try to answer some questions about Forestland. With that being said, Mr. President, I think we can turn it over to you, and you can run your meeting, sir.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, and we'll start off with a roll call. I'm Lance Morgan. Norma Klein?
Yes, this is Norma.
Willie Burris?
Willie Burris.
Dave Larson?
Present.
Charlie Waterman?
Here.
And Neil Westfall.
She said something about unmuting.
Did Neil unmute himself?
Yep, Neil, are you on the line? Did you get unmuted, or are we still having some slight audio issues there?
I feel like we could proceed. Well, that's taken care of, I guess.
Okay, yeah, we can proceed, Mr. Chairman, as we figure out that audio with Neil.
Okay, did everybody have a chance to look at last meeting's minutes? And you have any questions?
No questions from me.
Okay, we'll need to approve those minutes. We have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
Have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I second that.
Minutes have been approved. Approved. Do we have any old business? Being no old business, we'll move on to new business. And that's the forest classification presentation. I believe that's something you're taking care of.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we will be turning that on. With me while we select the right screen. And can one of the members confirm that they can see the presentation slide, Coos County Forestland classification, just to make sure everyone can see it there on Zoom land?
It looks good, Robert.
Okay, sounds good. So this is the reason why we're here tonight, Coos County Forestland Classification Public Information Zoom meeting. The objection on what we will cover here tonight is an introduction to the Coos Forest Protective Association, a background in forestland classification, discuss the forestland classification process and major decision points, review the committee findings, and receive public input from the public. And then there's a little note there to please put any questions you might have down in the chat window, and we will answer those as they come up at the end of the presentation. So the Coos Forest Protective Association is, or Coos Forest Protective Association, or Coos FPA, was founded in 1910. The Coos FPA is a local nonprofit association that contracts with the Oregon Department of Forestry to provide fire protection on public, private, and BLM lands in Coos, Curry, and western Douglas counties. Overview on the history of forest land classification. The forest land classification is a statewide system enacted in 1937 with the sole purpose to classify the types of lands inside the county boundaries based on the vegetation type. With that being said, there's two major categories. Non-forest land, which means no vegetation can grow at all, no grass, no brush, no trees, no shrubs. You're like on a sand dune, a mud flat, a big pile of rocks, something like that. And then on the other category, you have forest land, which is any type of vegetation can grow on that property. And inside that forest land classification, there's two subsections. You have grazing, which is the agricultural class, and it includes forest land suitable for grazing of livestock, and it is actively managed to support vegetation that does not include any native or local or tree species or brush species. So you're actively doing what you can to remove all other vegetation other than the crop you're trying to growing or the species you're growing. So your grass field, you're removing the blackberry briars, you're keeping the weeds out of it, you're keeping the poison oak and the new tree sprouts coming up, and you're managing it for the sole purpose of agriculture and grazing purposes. And then you have the timber category, which basically everything else lumps into is suitable for the production of timber or any other woody materials. So if you're basically, if you're got vegetation on your property, your forest land, and then if you are actively managing it for agricultural and grazing purposes for your livestock, then your graze and anything and everything else gets lumped into the timber category. The classification is used to determine the lands, what lands need to receive the Forest Patrol assessment and what lands do not. So this is all based off of, once we classify what you fall into, that sets to what assessment needs to happen for fire protection and fire response and suppression activities on that property for wildfire during fire season. The forest land classification and the corresponding per-acre Forest Patrol assessment are a major funding component of the Oregon Firefighting Protection System. Currently, off the last year's rates, you can see there below the current vegetation rates. For the timber class, it's $1.7870 per acre, and the grazing rate per acre is $1.3512. So that's for every acre you own, that would be the assessment rate as of last year per acre. But there is in the law, there's a bare minimum rate of $18.75, and that's required by 477-295. And if I remember properly, if you compute that out, that $1.78 or that $1.35, divide that by the 1875, that gives you what that threshold for your acres is, and I believe off last year's rate for timber, it's like 10.41 acres of ground. So if you were under that 10.41, you would get assessed the minimum 1875, and if you were above that 10.41, then you would be charged the $1.7870 per acre for the protection of that land per the classification. And then along with that, there is also a $47.50 surcharge added to the tax lots if and only if they are deemed as improved by the county assessor, which basically means there is a structure of some kind on the property, worth value, and a lot of that is for, they add that extra charge in there, because when you start adding improvements and structures, a lot of times that stops, standard firefighting procedure and tactics, because now we might not be able to fall back to road systems or bulldoze in certain areas because there's homes, or there's power stations, or there's, septic systems and things like that, so it alters, sometimes, alters the difficulty of the fire suppression activities, and it just makes it a little bit harder. So there's a little bit higher funding needed for the additional helicopters and bulldozers and air tankers and things like that might be needed in those situations. Here's a breakdown of the Forest Patrol assessment. The minimum surcharge of the $18.75 broken into two categories. $3.75 goes into the emergency fire cost fund, and $15 is dedicated to the Forest Patrol assessment, which is matched by the state's general fund. So last year, the Coos Forest Protective Association's district budget was roughly $6 million. This figure does not change as the property or assessed rates will fluctuate to reach that $6 million mark, distributing costs equally across the board. So it's, you take that money and you distribute it out evenly over all the tax lots and all of the land inside the county, to make it fair and equitable for everyone's paying their portion of the pie to meet that district annual budget. With this, it doesn't increase or decrease the district budget at all. It's like I said, it just spreads it out more evenly. So the more participants we have, the cheaper it gets for everybody, because there's more people paying into the kiddie pool. And that's the whole purpose of this, is to make it fair and equitable for fire suppression during fire season for all the taxpayers inside the county. So here's an example. At the grazing rate, 5 acres with no improvements on it is $18.75. And you can see at the same rate, the timber with no improvements, 5 acres is $18.75. Then if you go down, we have that same 5 acres, and you start adding the improvements onto it for grazing, that calculates out to $66.25 to cost to protect that property. And then at the timber rate, same thing, $66.25. When we start getting it above that minimum $18.75 mark is when the dollars start to change a little bit. For 40 acres with no improvements in grades, it's $54.04 for that 40-acre tax lot, and in timber, because of the higher rate, it goes up to $71.48 per acre. And then when you look at the same 40 acres in grazing with a house or a shop or improvements like that, it goes up to $101.54. And then the same 40 acres with the house and shop improvements, it goes up to $118.98. So you can see how it plays in with the minimum charge versus going over that minimum charge per acre, and then whether the property has improvements deemed by the assessor or not, and how it pays into that other portion of the funding. Why is that important to you? Here are some statistics for fire calls on the Coos CFPA district over the years. In 2007, we had 137 fire calls. 2008, 192 fire calls, or 2018, we had 191 fire calls. In 2019, we had 180 fire calls. In 2020, we had 172. And in 2021, we had 263 fire calls. So on a 5-year average, that's 188.6 fire calls annually every year during fire season that we respond to put fires out throughout Coos County. And that's one of the reasons why we go through this assessment process. So everyone that picks up the phone and dials 911 those 88 times gets service with hand crews and bulldozers and helicopters and everything else to protect their property and put the fire out before it gets too out of control and does too much damage on their property. Contributions that CFPA brings to the community with this funding, the resources we have 14 200-gallon initial attack engines during fire season, 6 950 gallon engines, 5 2,000+ gallon water tenders. We have approximately 110 firefighters on staff during fire season. 2 bulldozers to respond, a district exclusive use helicopter, and then we also have additional resources available to call upon if needed. So this is kind of during fire season when it's hot and dry and there's a threat of wildfire to damage your property. This is what the assessment funds that you guys are paying for brings to the table to help stop that fire from doing damage to your property in the county. Here's kind of a map to kind of represent the transition. You have here on the far right, you have the internal city limits like the Coos Bay, North Bend, buildings, streets, a lot of pavement, a lot of parking lots. There's very little, if no, wildland vegetation and no need for that. Everything's being protected by the local fire departments. And then on the far left, you have dense forest, industry ground, natural forest, things like that, with very little, if no, interactive with the general public or anything else, and they are protected by their means. And then everybody that's being affected by this process kind of falls in that middle area, the wildland urban interface. We have forest, timber, we have grazing, pasture lands, and we have a intermix of structures and buildings and roads and people activity that could spark a wildfire and poses the biggest amount of threat during fire season, that intermingling of human interaction with the natural resources of timber and pasture land. The purpose of the Forestland classification is to develop an accurate classification process that's corresponding with the assessment rules, to develop an equitable forestland assessment for Coos County, and to allow involvement of the local interests, the local government, and the local landowners in the process, so everyone's voice can be heard, and we can make the best decisions for the county and for the people of the county to protect the county and those people and their property from the threat of wildfire during fire season. The process of forestland classification review is to establish, the main process is to establish a county forestland classification committee. The committee will review all lands inside the county boundaries. Then the committee will classify all lands inside the county boundaries. Then it is determined where the Coos CFPA protection responsibilities exist. And then you assess the proper Forest Patrol assessment charge, the tax loss receiving the Forest Patrol protection. The classification committee is made up of 6 members. 3 are appointed by the county commissioners, and 3 are appointed by the state agencies associated with forestry and fire. Currently on the committee, we have Lance Morgan, who is our chairman. He has been appointed by the Coos County Commissioners. He's a general landowner. We have Norma Klein, who's the committee secretary. She has been appointed by the Oregon State University Extension Office, so she's kind of the forestry authority and guru when it comes to that. Neil Westfall has been appointed by the Coos County Commissioners as a large timber landowner. Charlie Waterman has been appointed by the Coos County Commissioners as a large graze landowner. Willie Burris, who is the Myrtle Point Fire Chief, has been appointed by the Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office to be their representative. And then currently we have a vacancy that is being filled in the interim by Dave Larson, the Southern Oregon Area Director, and he is representing the Oregon Department of Forestry. The work. All land within the county boundary gets looked at and gets divided into 40-acre blocks. The public land survey system quarter sections were used to do this. The land classification will reflect the majority of the vegetation growth within that 40-acre block on a 60% or greater basis. So when the committee looks at these 40-acre blocks, they determine what the majority is there. Is it 60% or greater timber? Then that 40-acre block is classified as timber. If it's 60% or greater grazing land, then it gets a grazing land designation, and if it's 60% or greater water or sand dune or something like that, or inside city limits and it's all pavement and streets and roads, then it gets classified as the non-forest land classification kind of thing. Once the whole county has been reviewed and all 40-acre blocks inside the county have been classified under one of those terms, then the next step is you take all the tax lots and you overlay that onto the map, and all the tax lots that fall within that classification block then take on that classification. And during this process, the local fire departments and the rural fire protection districts were all involved, having these conversations, determining with city limits and protection, best practices for protection, and who needs to be involved in protecting what portions of the land when it comes to the city limit fringes between the county and the city limit lines. Definition of forest land, 477001. Forest land means any woodland, brushland, timberland, grazeland, or clearing that during any time of the year contains enough forest growth, slash, or vegetation to constitute, in the judgment of the forester, a fire hazard, regardless of how the land is zoned or taxed. As used in the subsection, clearing means all grassland, improved areas, lakes, meadows, mechanically or manually cleared areas, rock or road, rocky areas, streams, or other similar forestland openings that is surrounded by a contiguous of forestland that has been included in area classified as forestland under ORS 526-305 to 526-370. Then the definition of timber and graze. Class 1 timber includes forest land suitable for the production of timber and may include land with structures present. So basically what that is saying is if your property can grow timber or any type of woody, brushy material, then it meets that timber category. And Class 3 is the other one that applies west of the Cascades, is the agricultural class, includes forest lands suitable for grazing of livestock and other agricultural use, and may include lands with structures and, on the property. So here's kind of when the committee does this work, here's kind of a snapshot of the map. This is actually of the abandoned area. It's all, like I said, everything's used off the public land survey system. So that's Township 28 South, Range 14 West, and you can see all 36 sections inside of that township and range. And inside those smaller red blocks, you can see the little tiny white blocks. Those are the quarters or the 40-acre blocks that the committee looked at and classified. So as we zoom in, you can kind of see there's a little closer picture of it. And you can see some of it kind of has a brownish tinge to it and an orange tinge to it. Those are the classifications, and they're, for the purpose of seeing what's underneath them, everything's at a 50% transparency, so you can see through the colors to see the ground underneath it. The brown area is been classified as a majority of timber, and the yellow areas have been classified as 60% greater grazing and needs to be labeled as grazing. So once the 40-acre blocks have all been classified, then what is done is we take a look at the current tax lots, and this is the same snapshot of the same area, and those are the current tax lots and what they are currently paying. So you can see a lot of the tax lots are already paying, or the brown color, they are already paying timber assessment. Some of you can see a little bit of yellow for some areas that for whatever reason were deemed as small little tracts that were deemed as graze. The blue are the split lots that at some point in time got made split, but probably should never have been made split just because of the laws and regulations and how that's governed. And then you have the little areas outlined in red, and those little outlined in red are tax lots that are currently not paying any forest patrol assessment. As you can see, the majority of them are very small lots, 1 acre, 2 acres or smaller, that throughout the years, as things were subdivided up and people built homes and everything, for whatever reason, things slipped through the cracks and they got lost off the tax rolls. So once we determine where everybody is at currently, and we know what the proposed classification is, we overlay everything on top of that, and you can kind of see what the classification needs to be changed to off the current snapshot since the last review. And you can see if you are one of the red tax lots that are not currently paying the assessment, you can see which classification class your 40-acre block is and what you need to be classified as, determined by the forest type surrounding your property and on your property. Once everything is said and done and the process is all over and the public hearings are all finalized and the committee finishes its work, this classification gets submitted to the state forester and to the county assessor's office in the county, and the appropriate changes are made to your property taxes to start assessing this charge. There is an appeal process outlined in ORS 526-332, which basically states if you have an issue with this or you don't think that it applies to you, or for whatever reason you don't agree with what the committee has done, once the committee finalizes everything and officially files their findings with the state and the county, you have 30 days to provide written notice to the secretary, and the information is there up on the screen. Again, you could send that to Norma Klein, care of the Coos Forest Protective Association. There's the address. All of those requests are taken in and submitted into the circuit court, and at that point in time, you would get your day in front of the judge to plead your case, and the judge would review the rules and regulations and listen to your side of the story, and then determine whether or not he agrees with you or not. With that being said, Mr. President, that concludes our presentation of the classification, and we are able to turn it back to you and answer questions.
Robert, I have one quick question, just
Yes.
to clarify on that 30 days on that last slide. Do you know when that 30 days starts?
That 30 days starts, it's 30 days from the date of filing. So whenever the committee finalizes their information and we officially file it with the state and with the county, those mailers will be sent out to everyone that's being affected in that 30 days from that time. And then it will be specified in the notifications. We can notify when you receive your mail as an affected landowner that it's been filed as of this date, so they have a start time and they know 30 days from that starting point is when the clock starts, and they have 30 days to submit their appeal in writing to the property.
I just wanted to make sure they would be notified, and so.
Okay, if that's complete, we'll open the public question and answer session.
So we have a couple of, Mr. Chairman, we do have a couple of questions here. One from Terry asks, how do you determine the fire patrol or fire protection classification?
You mean the process we used?
Yes, it says, how do I determine? I'm assuming he's meaning as a landowner, how does he determine that? I would say, you know, the general public doesn't determine that. That's a job of the committee, but they can review all of that on the maps, either at the Coos Forest Protective Association district office, or we also have an interactive web map online on our webpage. If you go to the Forestland classification presentation, it's a slightly different presentation than what we just went through, but it spells everything out. And at the very bottom of that, there's a map that you double click on, and you can start zooming in and find your property and start zooming in, and it'll start auto-populating all of the classification of what is current or what's being proposed, so people can review their area so they know exactly what they're being classified as at that time.
So basically mimics what we did during all of our meetings.
Yes, during everything that we've done through the meetings, and we digitized all that to make the maps, that GIS program is, and that product is all linked online, so as the committee changes a classification, as long as everything's working right, within a minute or two, that presentation online will be updated, so it's all real-time data, so as we physically change it throughout the meetings or through this process, at any point in time, landowners can go on there and see real-time classification decisions that have been made by the committee.
Okay.
And there's a link to that on your website, CFPA website?
Yeah, on the CFPA.net, and then there's a tab there that says Forestland Classification Presentation, and you can follow that into the presentation. It is at the very bottom of the presentation with the interactive proposed Forestland Classification map. You double-click on that and start zooming in, and it's like a Google Earth map, and you'll start seeing roads and cities, so you can start determining where you're at. And as you keep zooming in, things will get bigger and bigger, and the colors will start coming in. You can start seeing the reds or the yellows and the browns and everything else for timber and grays. And then in the lower left corner, there's a little white circle with some dots and some lines. If you double click on that, that will open up the legend, so all the colors make sense in case you forget what the colors are. That legend is there. It's just kind of hidden a little bit, just so it doesn't clutter up the screen all that much.
So if somebody has a problem accessing that or understanding the whole process, there's somebody at CFPA they can contact
Yes.
for help? Okay.
Yes, if anyone has issues with that, they can call the Coos Forest Protective Association district phone number on their mailer they received, and they can get directed to someone that can help them navigate that site and answer any questions they might have. Let's see here. We have another question that says, Vince asked, what exactly are they proposing here? So I would say the proposal is just to bring everything up to date, get to classify, per the law, classify all lands inside the county boundaries, and bringing those classifications up to date, so all lands and all tax lots and all taxpayers inside the county are paying their portion of the fire protection cost during fire season. So it's all fair and equitable for all taxpayers inside of Coos County.
And what I understood, what you said was, basically the people have, somewhere in the past, there's been some human error where it just fell through the cracks. It's just updating the system is what it is.
Yeah, it's just updating the system, exactly. And the Oregon law states that every 5 years this is supposed to happen. It hasn't happened a while in Coos County. It's been a little neglected over the years, but we're trying to rectify that and get everything back up to speed, and then from here on out follow that as close as possible to that 5-year term, that everything's getting reviewed, and so everything's staying current, so everything's fair and equitable for everybody.
So just out of my curiosity, is the county on board, like, say, the assessors, so these pieces don't fall through the cracks anymore? I mean, is somebody monitoring that so this doesn't happen again?
Yes, there's some checks and balances with acreage control and things like that we can do. Granted, everyone's human, so this, I can't guarantee this will never happen again, but at least we know that it's happened in the past, and now we can be a little extra vigilant to do checks and balances to make sure that this type of error doesn't happen in the future, so everything stays where it needs to be.
And I think, for the most part, this has all been already, this isn't like we're just putting on a new tax on everybody. We're just updating.
Yeah, updating. Yeah, this has been on the books since 1937, and it's been a process throughout the years. Like I said, unfortunately, some things fell off, and because of the time lag, I said it's been about 20, 30 years since Coos County has done this. There's a lot of landowners in the last 30 years that have moved to the area, bought property, never seen this before, so it appears to be like a new thing, but in fact it's not.
If I could chime in here real quick, it's not a tax, it's an
Or an assessment, yeah.
All right, so that's where we want to make sure we delineate that. And then the legislature back in 1997, they passed a law saying that all districts who have forest land, all associations and all Oregon Department of Forestry districts will go through and evaluate on a 5-year cycle those lands to make sure they meet the forest land classification. Because it's something that hasn't been done, for example, in some districts in the state, they finally just went through their forest land classification that hasn't been done since 1951. So I will say that this district is in really good shape, as far as, you know, what some of the other districts coming into. So from this point forward, now that the committee's done an overview and a full classification, from this point forward, it's gonna be a lot easier for the group, you know, 5 years from now to open it up, because the vegetation's not gonna change that dramatically in 5 years. You'll start to see some changes, and probably more than anything, as you get like urban growth and you start subdividing tax lots, that's gonna be some of those areas that you'll incorporate to pay that forest control assessments when they put improvements on those lots. So.
And what we found as a committee when we reviewed a bunch of these was it had been quite a while, and some lands had changed from grazeland to timberland, while others had been cleared and maintained and changed to grazeland.
That is correct.
Yes.
And that's why we're updating that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. So we have a few more questions. Let's see, Stacy says, we are new homeowners. How do we know the previous tax assessment? All of that data should be able to be found on the Coos County website underneath the Assessors tab, and then you can do some searches there for your address or your property account number, and it will bring up the full history of that property, when it was sold, who it was sold to, all and all the associated property taxes throughout the years, and all the assessments throughout the years, so you can get a full history of your property from the Coos County Assessor site online. How do we find out the specific assessment for our property? Again, that would all be found on the county assessor site. And as far as for this process and the assessment for forest land classification, like I said, there's a bare minimum of $18.75 annually, and off the current timber rates, which I believe just about everyone that received mailers would fall under, would be about 10.41 acres. So if you are under 10.41 acres of size on your tax lot, you would be assessed a minimum of $18.75. Anything above that threshold, then you could calculate out off the current timber assessment of the $78.70, I believe the number was, times your 20 acres or 100 acres or whatever that might be, and be able to come know exactly what that assessment was going to be. We have a question, again, I'm not sure if it's the same Annie or not, but we have another Annie asked, is this a new tax above and beyond what is already being paid to the Hauser RFD? So they fall inside of a rural fire protection district. So to answer that, it is not a new tax. It's something that's been around for a while, but it is above and beyond the fire protection made to the rural fire protection districts. The rural fire protection districts are there to protect your structures, your houses, your barns, your shops, things like that, in case they catch on fire. And the Coos Forest Protective Association or the Oregon Department of Forestry on the wildland side, you're paying this assessment for Forest Patrol assessment to protect your property and not your structures. It's protect your property and also hopefully stop the fire before it gets to your property and before it gets to your structures, so your local rural fire protection districts do not have to engage or hopefully not start fighting the structure fire, the barn fire, the shop fire that might result from the wildfire.
Like you had mentioned before, CFPA brings in, air support, hand crews.
Yeah, exactly. The rural fire protection districts, they're set up for, like, again, the structure fire, they come with the bigger trucks, the breathing apparatus, the heavy protection gear to go inside of a structure and put it out. They have specialized tools for that job, just like we have specialized tools like Willie just said, of the hand crews and the bulldozers, helicopters and the retardant planes and everything that it takes to do the firefighting and tactics out in the mountains and on your property, not on your structure. Cindy asks, how will the affected landowners be notified if the filing has been made, starting the 30 days? Will a letter be sent to the home of the landowners who pay taxes? When do you anticipate the filing will be made, ballpark timing? So I think we kind of briefly addressed that. Once the committee has finalized their findings and everything's filed, everyone that received a letter or that's going to be affected by this change will receive another a letter saying that the committee has finished its process and has deemed that the change needs to be made. It'll be a little bit lengthier letter than what you received before, and it'll actually break out what the tax lot ID is, or the map ID with the tax lot on there, and the acreage and what it's being assessed at. It will also briefly discuss the appeals process, and we will also make sure there is a date that is stipulated in that letter, so everyone knows, whether it be, February 1st or 15th or whatever the date might be, it will be stated in that letter when that will be officially filed with the state and with the county, so everyone that receives the letter knows when the clock starts.
Generally, I think what they're asking is, do you think it's gonna be in March?
Hopefully, a lot of it depends on any of the questions. The committee still needs to review the maps at least one more time, if not twice, and still get some go off the people's feedback. But hopefully, we would in a perfect world, we would like to have this finalized sometime in February and submitted sometime in February, because we have I believe it's March 1st, a hard deadline to have this filed, so it will apply on next year's taxes. If we miss that hard deadline, we can still file it, but it just will not go on to next year's taxes. It will be pushed out to the year after that. So there is a hard deadline for filing to get it onto to give the county and the state adequate time to process everything and get it onto the assessment rolls. And if we miss that hard deadline, it will just be pushed out an additional year before people see that increase on their assessment. So, Tom asked, are the costs you listed already included in our property taxes, or are these new costs? Well, again, it's one of those things that's, it's not a new thing, but if you're not currently paying the assessment because you, for whatever reason, fell off the tax rolls, at that time, it would be a new charge to you, but it's not like a brand new charge or brand new tax that is just starting in 2021 or 2020. It's been around for a very, very long time, and the property should have been paying this for the last 40 or 50 years, and just throughout time, somehow, some reason, it fell off the rolls, and it just never got caught until now.
Like when I look at my tax bill for my personal property, it says on there currently Forestland, or I can't remember the exact
Forest Patrol assessment.
Yeah, Forest Patrol assessment, exactly, and I'm in the same boat as a landowner. I get charged the surcharge for my improvement, because my property is deemed as improved, but throughout the years, it got dropped off the classification, so I don't pay Forest Patrol assessment. I will be at the end of this process, but I already do pay the surcharge into the system because my property has been deemed as approved by the county assessor.
Yeah, I guess people need to know there's no going back. They're not gonna come back and say you owe 20 years worth of.
No, there is no counteract or we don't go back in time. It's just from here on, from this day forward, this will be assessed from here on out. We're not going to go back over the life of the property, last 10 or 20 or 30 years, and collect back assessment. It's just starting fresh from here on out, and then we will be diligent to keep this process going every 5 years and to double and triple check things, to hopefully make sure that things do not fall through the cracks in the future, so we keep everything up to date and current. I believe we already answered Tom's, I believe, so I think we're down to Jim. Jim asked why the jump in calls for 2021. How do I update the name of the landowner on the file? So that's two questions. The increase in call volume, it's hard to say. It's more people activity, more people out camping. We did have a few lightning strikes throughout the district this year that could account for some of that, but just each year is different, you know, with the hotter and drier weather and the more people being out in the forest and working around their homes and burning in their backyards or out driving their four-wheelers and their pickups out through the woods or hunting. You know, there's hundreds of different reasons why that number could go up or go down each year. And the biggest factor is you know, heat increase and longer summers, hotter summers, drier summers, not as much moisture that we've been seeing in the last couple of springs and winters, which brings the fuel moisture down, makes the fuels more receptive to fire during fire season. There's a lot of that goes on. And then the second part of the question, how do I update the name on the landowner on file? That's all this information was pulled from the county assessor's office. So just make sure everything's current with the county. Because of COVID, you know, normally this process usually takes about a year. We did have a small stall out because of COVID and some of the nationwide shutdowns. So some of this data, when we started the process, we started in 2019, and now we're almost in 2022. So there has been some property being sold or bought or changed hands. So some of the mailers that did go out, the records that we had on file through this process were not 100% current. I did answer some phone calls along that. You know, I just sold my property 6 months ago or 7 months ago, and I'm getting this letter, but I don't own it anymore, kind of thing. So those situations do happen because we don't have real-time data, you know, all the time, kind of thing. We get our data upload from the county like once a year or twice a year, kind of thing. So at any point in time, the data could be skewed slightly by about 6 months to a year. But any changes could just confirm that everything's up to date and current with the county and the county assessor's office, and then they have passed that information along to us, so we know the proper stuff. But all that's all linked to the actual tax lot itself, not the landowner. It's all linked to the tax lot and the tax lot account. So as the landowner changes, it's not like we're going to go send the bill to somebody that doesn't own the property anymore. It's just whoever on the current account number. What's that? Oh, yeah, sure.
So Annie wants to know, Annie asks, will the forester notify the landowners of the committee will be coming to our areas to assess our forest classification? She wants to be coming to their property to do the assessment.
Typically, we most of all the classification is done through aerial photos and Google Earth and things like that. The only time that we would actually come toward to the property in person is if there was any question by the committee they're not 100% sure of what they're seeing, or they can't determine off the aerial photos, and then they will ask us to come do some land surveys. But we will not be coming directly on your property, walking around your house, walking through your forest. We're looking at that 40-acre block, and we will kind of drive around that 40-acre block using the public streets and roadways, maybe get on some ridge tops or some overviews, and then we'll take some pictures, make some notes, and then we can take all that information back to the committee and say, this is what we saw. Here are some pictures representing the area, that 40 acres. And so they have a better idea of to classify that 40 acres, but we will not be physically coming through your gate onto your property, walking around your house, your shop, out to your back 40, that kind of thing. We'll be very, very respectful of people's private property, and we'll stay on the public roads and things like that. And I believe at this time, all of the classifications have been done. And they're, unless the committee at a later time deems it necessary to review some more of those 40-acre lots, the majority of the review has been done at this point.
So can a person specifically ask you to come look at their property and you will go on their property?
Yes, if a landowner specifically wants us to come out and review their property, or if they have questions about fire or forest land or anything, we can assist the landowner in any way, shape, or form. All they have to do is call our district office and give them the information we need, and we'll send a forester out to have those conversations with the landowner and to have whatever, and to assist them in any way possible.
And should be noted, the committee did have some people go out and ground truth and take a peek at some properties that we couldn't tell by looking at the aerial map.
Yeah, we did out through the Sitcom and Dora area, some of the pasture lands there that either were irrigated or not irrigated, or there were some questions. It looked like they'd done some recent logging by the aerial photos that we had, and we weren't sure if they replanted to go back to timber or if they were converting it over to graze and pasture land, because it was right up against an existing grazing area. So we have done a couple of days worth of checks out there. Again, we just stayed on the county roads, and then we didn't go on anyone's private property to do that.
So Colin asked, does the story map show the tax lots that will be changed outlined in red? Question mark.
For the first part of that question, the tax lots are not currently on the presentation at this time, but we can definitely add those if the committee would like those added, or we can make that available to the landowners if they would like. But currently, just because of the classification process is strictly on the 40 acres, that's all that's on there currently now, because when you start adding too much stuff, a lot of times it gets very, very confusing, and hard to make out what means what. So we're trying to keep it as simple and straightforward as possible to make it as clear as we can for the landowners.
And then he asks, can you give an example of an area where the tax lot's changing status? And you may have done that with your Sitcom Dora explanation.
Yeah, I believe there were some areas out there through Myrtle Point, Sitcom Dora, some of our bottom land that had some grazing in there. Again, and on the hillside adjacent to that, they did some logging, and whether or not it was being converted to pasture land or if it was then replanted and going back to forest land, things like that.
Tom asked, is this assessment paid with our taxes then, question mark?
Yes, it is all everything's assessed to the county assessor's office through law. They collect everything and then send it to the appropriate agencies or funding. So this will just be an addition to your property taxes. So when you get your property taxes next time or next year, at the bottom, there's usually a breakdown. It'll tell you what airport district you're in, or water district you're in, or garbage district, or rural fire protection district. And at the bottom there, you'll see, if it's not already there, you'll see Forest Patrol assessment, and then it'll just say either minimum 1875, or if you're above that, it'll say like Forest Patrol assessment, timber 40 acres, or graves 20 acres, or whatever that classification is on your tax lots, or on your printout from the tax assessor.
Annie says, please explain taxes versus assessment.
Yeah, taxes are collected based on the assessed value of your property. So if you have a land and a house that, is valued at $300,000, then the tax that is imposed on that is at a basis of, $15 per thousand, or whatever the rate that is set. Or just like for your fire district bills, some fire districts, school districts, those sorts of things, they may be taxing you $4 per $1,000 of assessed value. Here with the Forest Patrol assessment, that assessment is based on the land classification of an assessment, and then that assessment is based on, what either the minimum of $18.75 assessment, or it's going to be based on the per acre rate, which I believe was about $1.78
for timber.
Yeah. So it is different. Taxes are based on the property's value, and this assessment is based on the assessment of what's on your property, whether it be timber or grazing.
I'm going to read the next question, but I'll start it by saying that Sarah should probably call our office first thing in the morning, and we can answer this question. Sarah says, I'm just joining, and I got a letter about the meeting. I'm on Matthew Lane, and how does this affect me? So you can look at their presentation on our website, but feel free to call in, and you can probably get me first thing in the morning. I can go over the whole thing. Again, there'll be another community hearing before we're done here, so you'll have plenty of opportunity to be heard. Annie says, moving forward, will this be reflected on our tax bill?
Yes, I believe we covered that. Once the committee is finished with their process and everything's submitted to the county and the state, this will, you'll start seeing this change on your county, or your property taxes annually each year, as a forest patrol assessment, there towards the bottom. So your property taxes will go up slightly depending on how much, acreage you have and what classification bracket you fall into.
But most people have already got it on there, correct? Most people are not gonna see a change because, most people are already paying it. Correct?
Well, for the county as a whole, yes, but there are, through this process, we've determined, and the people that got these letters, there were over 5,000 tax lots that have fallen off the tax rolls. The majority of these letters have gone out to those people that fell off the tax rolls. So currently, like this year, if they look at their tax statement, it will not say Forest Patrol assessment on there. There are a few out there that will say Forest Patrol assessment, and those are the ones that might have went from a timber to a graze, or they were, in previous years, the split lot and seeing, 20 of timber, 10 of graze, and now those would be, per the law, those are actually supposed to be combined for like a 30 of timber. But for the majority, probably 95% or more are small landowners, 1 or 2 acres or smaller, that fell off the tax rolls and now need to be added back. So they're currently not seeing that, and next year, they will see Forest Patrol assessment for $18.75, the minimum on their property taxes annually.
Okay, so there was like 5,000 people fell through the cracks, right?
Yeah, over the years, yes.
Okay, I didn't think it was that much, so. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, and it's not exactly 5,000 people, it's 5,000 tax lots. I believe we sent, I think we sent out roughly 4,000 mailers because people own several properties. So, there are some people out there, just one person, one property, reviewing some of the stuff. I think there was 1 or 2 landowners that owned like 10 or 15 properties all over the county, that, for whatever, either small little subdivision lots here and there, 1 or 2 in Myrtle Point, 1 or 2 in Hauser, 1 or 2 down in Bandon kind of thing, that throughout the years just slowly sifted through. So that one landowner will, totally has a lot more, is taking up a bigger portion of that pie, kind of thing. That's why we only had like 4,000 mailers versus the 5,000 tax lots.
20 years ago, I had 40 acres, they divided into 10, or 4 10-acre lots. They're gonna get a separate bill for each one of those 4 lots.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a phone question, there's no name on it. I thought you said that we could find our current CFPA assessment on Coos County Assessor's webpage. I checked, and that's not separately identified for any of our properties.
Well, it should be, if you go to like I said, if you go to the Coos County Assessor's page and type in your property, there should, I believe it's either summary or details, and it's a printout page of what you basically receive in the mail each year.
If they received the letter, it's probably not on
Exactly.
the assessment yet.
Exactly. So if you receive the letter and it's physically not on your printout that you received, or on your printout on the tax lot or on the assessor site currently, it's because you are not currently paying Forest Patrol assessment and you were one of the ones that needed to be added.
Annie says, thank you. Will there be another Zoom meeting about fire and forest protection? It really helps.
Well, this meeting and this presentation will be put online, so you can review it at a later time. You can also, call any of our offices at any time and have in-depth conversations with any one of our foresters about fire and forest patrol and forest patrol assessment. The current plan is, to my knowledge, all that we are required to do is one more public hearing to make this finalized. But at the end of this meeting, if the committee can have as many meetings as they deem necessary. So at the end of this meeting, we can set up a different, if the committee wants to, we can have another Zoom meeting and then do this again for the public, or it's totally up to the committee's determination of how many of these we do.
I think what they're asking has nothing to do with us. I think they're interested in, if it might be your thing, a local fire, what's happening with fire in Coos County, sort of a thing.
And that is fine. Yeah, you can call any one of our local offices. You can call the district office in Coos Bay, and they can route you. Or we have offices in Reedsport, Coos Bay, Bridge, Bandon, Gold Beach and Brookings, you can call any one of those offices and ask to speak with the forester, and we can chat with the public about fire protection, fire prevention, and what we can do anything we can do to assist them in their efforts.
I think what they want is, like I said, it's not us, but I think they want to see what the fire situation, maybe in Coos County, has nothing to do with the taxes.
Yeah.
They want to know what the fire is in Coos County, I guess.
Gotcha, like the current fire danger and that type of
Yeah,
thing?
maybe your whole organization, what's happening. I think that they're asking information about firefighting.
Gotcha, and like I said, you can call any one of our offices. We also have a Facebook, we have a website, we have a Twitter account, and you can follow, current fire activities. If you have questions, you can either call our offices or ask a Facebook question or things like that. There's a lot of outlets here for.
You have a booth at the fair too.
And we have a booth at the fair, and most of the larger county functions, since COVID, I don't think we do anymore, but we used to have the homeowner show in North Bend annually. We have a booth there, and any large county
Gathering.
or city gathering, we try to have a booth there with representation to interact with the public and ask any questions they might have about fire in their property and what they can do.
Okay, Quincy says, do you have an estimate of what the reclassification will add to your budget? What investments do you plan based on the increase?
I'll speak on what this does for the budget. It does not increase the district's budget one penny. That budget is already set by the board of the Coos Forest Protective Association, and what they determine is what an adequate level of protection is going to be for this district. That rate has already been established at, I believe, $6 million.
Yeah, last year was $6 million.
So last year was $6 million. So even if we go out and collect an additional, and I'm just making this number up, $1 million, the rate is still, or the budget's still only going to be $6 million. But what that will do is everybody that's paying in to the system, they would see their rates actually go down. We cannot collect more than what's already been determined as that $6 million. The other caveat that I would add to this is that, you're paying your forest patrol assessment. So you're paying your minimum. Say you're paying $18.75. The state of Oregon general fund is also going to match that what you're paying. So it's based on a 50-50 split. So when you think about the budget and how everything's going on here, it is not going to increase the district's protection budget at all.
Gypsy?
So.
Since I already have changes on my taxes, since I already have these charges on my taxes, will anything change for me? I'm just wondering if the rate will be changing from what I have been charged this year. So she could be one of those people that's, the way the computer generated stuff, there was a lot of people who got these letters who may have gone from, they might be a minimum, but they could have changed in a timber block to a graze block for whatever reason. Chances are, if you are less than an acre or less than 10 acres and you're already paying Forest Patrol assessment, nothing is probably going to change for you.
But if you received a letter, it probably means there's going to be an increase. You only send out letters to folks that are going to either be new to the system or pay an increase in their Forest Patrol.
Yeah.
I think
Because the computer generated more letters than needed to get out. So you might be one of the people who generated a letter to that didn't need to have a letter generated.
We're merging 3 different assessment systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Annie says, is there a site to check new fire laws or rules pertaining to forest land protection?
I believe on our website, CFPA.net, we do have links to all the Oregon fire laws and rules and regulations. You can also find that on the Oregon Department of Forestry's website, and you can navigate through that, and they have links to all the ORSs and OARs that govern forest law in fire and in every aspect of forestry on the Oregon Department of Forestry site.
Gypsy also says, what is the difference between a fire patrol surcharge and a fire patrol timber?
Fire patrol surcharge, the surcharge, I would say, is probably based on your structure. So that would be, and all that money does not go to the district's budget. That goes into the emergency fire cost fund up in Salem that gets distributed out for large fire costs. The other part of that question was timber?
Yeah, I think she's just trying to say the normal fire patrol rate versus the surcharge.
Yeah, yeah. So that's basically what it is. If you see a surcharge, that's because that's on the structure itself.
It's an improvement, and you're paying into the large fire fund, and the forest patrol assessment is your local initial attack funds to hopefully stop a fire from getting big, and then if it does get big, heaven forbid, the surcharge helps pay for the big fire and the hundreds and hundreds of firefighters and tankers and helicopters and everything else it takes to take care of a multi-hundred or 1,000-acre fire.
All the cost outside of your budget.
Yes, all the costs outside of your budget.
Quincy asks, do we have adequate resources?
Well, you could speak for CFPA, and I'll speak for the Oregon Department.
Our board of directors budgets for an adequate level of protection. So locally, we have adequate resources to deal with an average fire season. There's extremes on either end. Some years we have way too many resources, and other years we wish we had a lot more resources. So based on a standard year, we budget for adequate resources to suppress those fires. And then you go ahead and...
Yeah, for the Oregon Department of Forestry, so when you look at adequate level of suppression, so all suppression systems are designed for the best worst-case scenario, and typically that's one start. Where things get really complex is when you have multiple fires, such as a lightning and whatnot. But what all districts do is we evaluate at the end of the fire season and take a look and see if we've met our key performance measures. So one of the measures that the Department of Forestry utilizes in CFPA is 90% or 98% of all of our fires are held at 10 acres or less. That is a key performance measure. If we see over time we're not meeting that, or the number of human-caused fires is drastically going up, or the amount of times that we use emergency fire cost funds above our district's budget, that triggers the question for the board of the association to sit down and look and say, are we making an adequate level of protection? So I would say with the budget here for the Department of Forestry and for CFPA, the answer would be yes. But there are times that the system gets overwhelmed, and so that's what severity money's for, a whole different conversation.
Mm-hmm. And then Quincy adds and says, is $6 million enough? And that gets back into your statement there.
Yep.
See here, we got 40 participants still on the line, and we're waiting on some questions. And right now, we're still waiting on some questions. And it looks like we'll give them a minute, and then we'll start wrapping this up.
Those are some good questions people ask, and clarifications. I was just looking at your website. You have a wealth of information on there, on CFPA's website.
Good.
Lots of information there to push on.
Yeah, there is, and from my interaction with a lot of the phone calls, it seems like just about everyone that visited the site did appreciate that. There were a few people that it was slightly confusing. A lot of it was the terminology, like forestland, grazing land, and because the rules were written in 1937, it's the same word, but how it was used and how it was structured and how it was meant differs then than it does now, so it was slightly confusion. They say, well, forest land, I've got 2 trees on my property, I don't own a forest kind of thing. So some of those nuances, but once we were able to get through and explain some of that, most of the stuff I think people understood for the most part.
As a committee member, I would just reiterate, we didn't just do this overnight. We had several meetings, several late nights here going over the maps, and we'll be going over them again probably.
Yes.
Jessica just asked, what happens if the $6 million budget is used up and more fires persist?
Well, if you expend all $6 million of your budget because you've had a really bad fire season, then anything that you went over budget on will be calculated and carried over into the next fiscal year. So if you overspent your budget by $100,000 or $200,000, you are going to have to pay that back in the next fiscal year, so.
But it's trickier than just spending that much money, because as soon as we have a large fire that goes into the emergency fire fund, that emergency fire fund starts picking up those costs. So you can have $20 million worth of fires and still not spend the $6 million of your budgeted suppression money, because that is for initial attack. Once you get out of those initial attack into an extended attack fire, the emergency fire fund is starting to pick up some of those bills. So that $6 million for initial attack goes a long way.
It's not necessarily about the big fire, it's about when you start fire season and bring all your seasonal firefighters back and when they leave. So if you budget 5 months for a seasonal firefighter and your fire season went 8 months, you're gonna have to pick up the difference. That's really where it comes, where the money's at.
Okay, are we gonna close down the comment? Seems to,
We'll close down the comments, it seems like it's slowed down.
I think we might have one more.
One more?
coming in, possibly.
You'll get another chance in like another month, won't they?
Or they call in.
Yeah, or yeah, if there's further questions, yeah, they can call in to the Coos Forest Protective Facility, and we can chat with them. They can chat with the forester about some of this, Mr. Chairman, and.
Mr. Chairman, we'll give this one, this last question here. Debbie says, we have land schemes with lots of alleys on our 1 acre. They are assigned different tax lots. Will we be charged on each?
So it sounds like maybe a 1 acre portion of land, but it's broke up into multiple quarter acre, tenth of an acre tax lots, things like that.
Yes, if the tax lots, if you own all those tax lots, and so you may have multiple corridors, I've seen this, you know, with some other assessments, and it could be like easements, whatever comes through, but if you have multiple tax lots and they're all yours, then you can actually file an application to make those a contiguous lot. So, but they have to be adjoining each other and be contiguous for that to happen. So if you have 1 acre and 5 different lots on there, well, you can apply for a contiguous lot, and then you just pay 1 forest patrol assessment.
And there is a fee associated with that, and I don't know if you have to do it every year, and it's every year.
Yep, I believe it's $25
$25,
fee that you have to, application fee, and then it has to be renewed annually, yep. But it could be a pretty good savings if you have quite a few contiguous.
Would that be through the assessor's office, or?
No, that gets filed with the association, and then they make sure those changes are filed with the assessor's office, yep.
Okay, so that's gonna end the public, question and answer portion on here, and then, like I said, anybody that's still listening, if you have more questions, you can call any of our offices, and we will answer your questions, and then there'll be an opportunity at the next, Zoom meeting, we do the public hearing to, ask more questions.
So is there anything else for the good of the order?
I think just good of the order, if we want to set a date, if we want to do another meeting to review maps again, Mr. Chairman, or if everyone's comfortable where they're at, to set a date for the public hearing, but it would, to my knowledge, it'd just be our next meeting date and what that's going to look like for the committee.
I think we're pretty comfortable with what we've done with the maps in the past, unless somebody has called you and they have some major changes.
I don't think so, not to my knowledge. All the questions that we've received are basically what we've answered here tonight, just kind of how it all works and what it means to people, and that kind of
We
thing.
do have one lot here that's been requested to be reviewed.
Oh, yeah, there was a call in, my apologies, Mr. Chairman, it's from the Hauser Community Church on Wildwood Drive, and I think you know a little bit more about the note that was taken.
Yeah, there's several lots there. There's a couple that are on Wildwood Drive that the church is on that he says they should not be charged because they're not wildland, so he wants them to be looked at. And then there's a 20-acre chunk of the church owns that's on 101 that would be forest land. So,
I guess we can review them at the next meeting then, I believe.
Okay, so would you like us to go out and do a,
Yeah, go ahead.
on-site inspection
Yeah.
and double check that, and then we can get back to you on the next meeting? Yes, we can do
And I
that.
think they need to understand, we go by that 40-acre parcel.
Yeah, exactly.
So do you want to set a meeting date then? We need to set one?
Yeah, that would probably, should set a meeting date. It's beginning of December, and we've got the holidays
Yeah.
coming up and everything else, so it's probably gonna be after the first of the year, I imagine, would be the best opportunity for that for just about everybody.
Is there any night that doesn't work for anybody in January? I'm open for the month.
What's that, Neil? I think I heard you talking.
Nothing.
Okay.
How about the second week of January then? 10th to the 14th. You want to do it on a Wednesday night, like the 12th?
The 12th of January, that's open for me.
Open for me.
Works for me.
It's good for me.
Okay for me, Charlie.
All right, we'll make it for the 12th, same time, 6 o'clock?
If that works for everyone, yes, we can do that.
And type of meeting, is this another town hall, or is this your final hearing?
Yeah, with this, what type of meeting are you proposing, Mr. Chairman? Is this another, public, town hall type meeting with questions and answer? Is it just a review of the maps, or is it gonna be the public hearing where we finalize things? What?
You feel we need to have another Zoom meeting with the public? I mean, it seemed like everybody they're good questions, but I think maybe everybody got their questions answered though, too. Maybe we should review everything we've done.
Yeah, we can go back over, if you like, we could do one final review of a quick look at all the work we've done so far, and we can report back out on this Hauser piece, and, just do a quick county review and then set the date for the public hearing. Would that be adequate?
Well, we can do a public meeting in the first 30 or 40 minutes, and then follow it with the public hearing.
Probably just an idea for, we got that timeline.
Yep.
Okay.
Can't stretch
So,
it.
yeah, we could definitely do that, do the committee meeting, the first half, and then as long as there's no big, huge changes that need to be addressed, we can roll right into our public hearing and make that the final meeting, and get the process going.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay.
And that may be the last meeting we have.
Yes, if everything goes and we don't have any huge hiccups, that would probably be the last meeting we would have for
There
the
would
next.
be one more after that, then that would be to finalize the order. And so,
Okay, gotcha.
so this would be the hearing, and then after the hearing, you can do it, within a couple of weeks, and just do another, like a work session, and it's a public hearing, or you give public notice that the committee's gonna meet, and then you can finalize the order.
Sounds good. So if that's everything, this meeting is adjourned.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for everyone that's joined us, out on Zoom, and, hope you have a good night.